Hello, good morning. It is Wednesday, the 10th of November, and as I am recording this video, we have a perfecting aspect where Mercury is conjoined with Mars in Scorpio at 7 degrees, and they're both squaring the planet Saturn, which is hanging out in its own sign of Aquarius at 7 degrees. And that is a perfect aspect right now. The moon is at 8 degrees Aquarius. It's just separating from Saturn, so even the moon is setting off this aspect. So the aspect is fairly potent. But by the time I've recorded this and uploaded it, it will probably be separating, and this will be kind of be a hindsight thing, I suppose. This is not such a astrological preview, but whatever. I'm just kind of taking it as it comes here. Um, I'm using this video to describe some of the things that I've been noticing about this aspect. Um, I've got a couple things I could talk about. First of all, the biggest thing that's the most fresh on my mind, anyways, is that yesterday, I don't know who's watching this or who's keeping up with what's going on with me, but I recently got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. I had spent over a month in the hospital. Um, and now I've been back at home. I've been out of the hospital for about a month. But one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm being tapered off of the steroid for it, and I'm being put on what's called a biologic medication, which is like it's basically an immunosuppressant kind of medication, and I have to go into a clinic to to get it as an infusion where they stick an IV in me and they pump this stuff into me, and it takes like 2 or 3 hours, and I had to do that yesterday, which was kind of like for me was interesting to see um, the astrology of November and seeing that the perfection of this aspect where Mercury is conjoined Mars, squaring Saturn, that this happens right at the same day that I'm scheduled to get this infusion of this drug, which, and the drug itself, again, it's like, um, what I've heard of it is that it's, like with any medication, if you're on these medications over the long term, then they can start to maybe have some problems. Like I've heard that people that are on it for like years and years and years might get liver problems or something like that. Or also the fact that it does, I mean, apparently it doesn't suppress your immune system too badly, but then if you've been on it for years and years and years and years, then you're more at risk of things like COVID and stuff. But I mean, I'm just just out of the hospital for a month. I'm just getting on this stuff now. And I think I mean, I'm basically just exploring some of this stuff as I see it in my own life, because if you look at the topic of illnesses, medications, treatments, immune systems, all this kind of stuff, this could be said to be very relevant to a Mercury Mars Saturn dynamic, with Mars itself represents, both injuries, afflictions, your own immune system, which fights things off. Mercury represents kind of like the technology or the skillful means, or um, the pharmacist, or uh, the person prescribing things. Saturn represents the illness, the disability, the limitations. Um, so it all kind of comes together pretty nicely, I would say, fitting with that kind of aspect. Um, but there's certain questions that I have, um, or at least I'm exploring it. Like, is it if you see an aspect like this on that corresponds with a certain treatment, and you can see that the aspect involves both the traditional malefics in a square aspect to each other. It's not a very easy. It's not a, it wouldn't necessarily be seen as a positive aspect, and people would look at this, a month of November where you've got Mars square Saturn and all this, and Uranus in there too and stuff like this, and be like, this is a difficult month, this is a kind of a bad month astrologically. Is this is this telling us something about the treatment, that the treatment itself is a bad treatment, right? I mean, because I'm certainly, there is certain things about it, like over the long term, there could be side effects, there could be liver problems, stuff like that. There could, but it could also be maybe just the situation in general. If you're in the if you're in a situation where you need this treatment in the first place, it's a difficult situation, right? And that maybe it says something about the whole situation in general, and that it's not like you're not you. This is the other thing too. It's like, is it like you see the astrology that you've got squares between the malefics, and you're like, oh well, this is bad. I should find some way out of it. I should, it's a bad sign or something like this, or is it just a sign that, shit, I had a serious health problem and now I have to have a treatment for it or something like that. Maybe it just goes with that. Um, I'm kind of like, for me, I don't know. Like, I think I would. It may not be healthy for me to look at thing to see it as being such a bad omen or something like that. Like, that maybe with placebo and nocebo and stuff like that, it's better to look at it more positively. But it's sort of like, it's like a difficult. It's not really like the easiest aspect, really, right? It's not really the most positive indication. At the same time, to change subjects, I mean, a lot of this. Before I go on too much about this stuff, too, I'll have to say that, I mean, I'm taking a different kind of approach with these videos, because before, I didn't really want to, like, if I'm doing astrology videos, I wanted to keep my life and the astrology kind of separate, so in the sense that I could just, like, you know maybe people aren't interested in everything that's going on with me personally, and they just want to learn something about the astrology that's going on. But one of the things that I've kind of realized is that if I'm putting myself out there in any way, shape, or form, whether that's whatever, doing videos like this, doing, or whatever other ways I'd be expressing myself or putting myself out there, and I can't really hide I can't really separate myself from what I'm doing, and especially when I'm talking about what is really going on with the astrology, it kind of, what the way I'm experiencing it is through my own life and what's going on with me. Now, if it seems like it might not be relevant, or if I'm just rambling about something, bear with me. I will try to tie it into the astrology eventually, but everything that I'm trying to talk about in these videos, I'm only talking about because I feel like it's relevant to the aspects, the transits that are happening. So there's a couple other things that I've noticed. The last video I uploaded, I uploaded a video where I was mentioning, because I had just noticed that day that Mercury had gone direct. Well, not that Mercury had gone direct, that Mercury is now out of the shadow. I also, for some reason, I didn't neglected to mention that Mercury was also scoring Pluto in that video. But yeah, it just finished its square with Pluto, and it was out of the shadow, the retrograde shadow. Now we're in totally Mercury clear, Mercury direct, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, seriously, I had just recorded that video, and I had just gotten that up and stuff, and then what happened was I got the delivery in the mail of this. I had a Eurorack module that I'd been using for nearly 2 years, and the thing just died on me. Like, I mean, I won't get into all the details because I don't want to waste your waste everyone's time talking about music gear. But I had this thing, anyways, that I'd been using, and eventually it just like stopped working, and I was kind of upset about that, to say the least, because I was using it in my music a lot, and it was one of my more expensive and well used pieces of gear, and I was, needless to say, kind of disappointed to have the thing just blow up on me. Um, it's also getting interesting too because I had this health problem, and I also had like my motherboard on my computer blow up. Just, or, I mean, not blow up. Just my motherboard failed at the same time that I was having physical health problems, and then I also had music gear fail, and it was just sort of like this sense that like everything was breaking and nothing was working right and stuff like that. But the good news, anyways, was that shout out to the manufacturer ALM Busy Circuits. This is the squid sample that I'm talking about. They have a manufacturer's warranty, and I emailed them about what was going on, and they asked me to mail the module all the way back to England, and they sent me a new one, basically. And so, basically, long story short, right as I made this video about how Mercury is out of the shadow period, Mercury's out, Mercury's in the clear, Mercury the messenger, Mercury the mailman, the delivery guy, and all this kind of stuff. Then I get my delivery of my module fresh from England, ready to get. But there's something about it that I actually got. Instead of being happy and excited that I got my that I got this thing back, I actually kind of fell into a depression for a bit there, and I don't know about how much I'm prepared to just talk about this on my astrology little video blog here. But I mean, there's something about being a creative person. I mean, a lot of it gets there's a lot of talk about like writer's block or creative blockages, or like having issues about being like confident, or whether you're just wasting your time or whatever. Or yeah, I mean, I don't I don't know if I really want to get into too much of that kind of stuff now, but it was like it also, to be honest, it has a lot to do with me and the fact that we're in a pandemic, and that I originally bought this thing like pretty much right before the pandemic started, and I was kind of like, I had it in mind of like building the ultimate like live like dance music, rocking out, making improv techno for like a dance party kind of thing. And since the pandemic has started, the whole dance music scene in particular has been affected by it. And I'm personally not the kind of person who, um, wants to be. I mean, maybe when I was younger, I was more about like rebellious, Rage Against the Machine, and but now I'm not. I don't really think it's that cool to be like, you know, throwing dance parties when there's like, I don't know. I think it's better to like abide by the rules of this kind of thing. But I see places and all over the world is opening up, and people are having more of these events. But where I live in British Columbia, there's still dancing. Dance parties are still illegal, and it seems like a kind of a mismatch maybe. And then I've got it sort of sets off this yeah, whatever, creative. I don't know if you want to call it creative blocks, but the sort of like is it worth all my time and energy to be invested into this particular pursuit, or is there something else I should be doing? All these kind of questions. And instead of being excited for getting this thing, I was not. I was kind of bummed out for and whatever. Eventually, though, I mean, the other thing too is that if you look at the timing of when I got it, I mean, it arrived basically when the moon was at that balsamic moon in Libra, basically just like setting the stage for like, oh, you get this new, it's not, I guess it's sort of a new thing. It's like the rebirth or whatever, the sampler module returns kind of thing right in time for this new moon in Scorpio with with Mars opposite Uranus. And it just sort of like, and I just made this video about how the new moon, I mean, it's a pretty gnarly lunar cycle that we're in, because it starts off with the moon in its fall, perfectly opposite Uranus. And I mean, even that, it kind of like goes with um, electronic music. I've actually have a astrology book called the Rulership Book, where it has listed. It's just basically like a dictionary where you can like look up different things and see what planets are associated with them according to this astrologer who wrote it. And if you look up electronic music, the associated with Uranus, because Uranus has that technological kind of aspect to it. So in a way, it's sort of like um, it makes sense. It fits. It works anyways with a new moon, a new beginning, opposite Uranus, the technological thing. But it was just like it's it's the moon does not do well in Scorpio, and Mars is there, which, I mean, Mars does do well in Scorpio, but it's kind of this malefic influence, and it's all setting off that Uranus thing. And then of course, like I mentioned before, it culminates in a full moon lunar eclipse, not a good sign, that is conjunct Algol, the worst fixed star of them all. It just looks like a crappy time. Like I was watching the astrology podcast. I'm just gonna be pretty much upfront about it, that like I don't want to spend too much time listening to other astrologers and doing stuff, because I want to just try to like do my own astrology work at this point. But basically, like the only I'm sorry to all my astrology friends, but the most I pay attention to is really like the monthly astrology podcast forecasts, and maybe my old teacher at Chuda now and then as well. But I'm like, um, I was got this impression though that like November was going to be a tough month, not really a great time to like launch your new project, because it's like in such a like afflicted lunar cycle, to have a full moon lunar eclipse, conjunct Algol, and to have all this Scorpio Uranus, blah, like I'm just thinking of saying. So I just kind of felt like it was sort of like an ill-fated. It, it was just like it was a. I felt, I don't know. I was not looking. I was not feeling very happy about it. But what I did, I basically gave it a few days, waited for the moon to get out of its Scorpio phase, and then while the moon was in Sagittarius, I decided, what the hell, I might as well, set this thing up. I mean, I saw this after having so many technological problems. I was just sort of like, it wasn't. I rationally knew what I had to do to get things set up and working, and I'm happy to say that I got it all set up without a hitch. But I was just sort of like expecting things to go wrong, or like worried that like it's all going to go bad or something. But I got it set up, um, and I guess I should also mention that like I don't I don't always like mention some of the positive aspects going on, but there was some like nice sort of like I think there was like before Venus went into Capricorn, there was a nice sort of like sextile between like Venus and Sag uh and Jupiter and Capricorn or Jupiter and Aquarius, sorry, or Jupiter Aquarius making trines to Libra stuff. Like there was some, there's some positive things going on as well, and maybe that could be the me being fortunately getting my warranty. I thought I was worried I'd have if I wanted this thing, I'd have to just buy it over again, but it would just before my warranty runs out, I get it replaced, which is nice, and it all kind of comes together pretty nicely without a hitch. Like me, excuse me if I'm rambling about this at this point, but um, I've while I was in the hospital, I had on my iPad, I had been using my iPad to record a bunch of like samples off the internet. And the piece of equipment here is a sampler, and I had been excited once I got back home to start putting all these samples on it and in arranging them in such a way that I could start getting some music happening. And it was a delayed it was a delayed process. I wasn't able to do it as soon as I got out of the hospital, but now that I've got this piece of gear replaced and I'm doing that basically. I'm putting together these samples, and I'm starting to realize that there's something about Mercury and Mars together that it seems like Mars is kind of like putting the fuel in the gas tank in a way that it's like things you know Mercury being the messenger, the communicator, the technician, that there seems to be a quality right now when with Mercury and Mars together that it actually seems to be actually pretty helpful for being productive in these kinds of things. Like, I mean, for me, I'm talking about electronic music, putting sample banks together and setting up gear and all this kind of stuff. And like, I was like worried, I guess, because of the square to Saturn, that it would be a like problems would be coming up, or there'd be bad things coming of it or something. But if anything, it's like Mercury and Mars are kind of like kicking ass, but it's coming up against my own Saturn blockage of feeling kind of depressed, or that like Saturn hermit kind of ruminating like quality. You can feel the Saturn kind of coming in there, or um I mean, there's also this kind of thing where I kind of feel like the music that I make, I'm a bit self conscious about it because it tends towards this direction sometimes of being like dance music, of being kind of like not, it's less about, I'm not making like, Baroque chamber music, or, or like, I'm not making like, highbrow sophisticated stuff. It's kind of just getting beats and beats banging and fun stuff, or I don't know. There's something about it that seems in the kind of atmosphere of the pandemic, of where we're at right now. It seems like there's kind of like this sort of like everything's sleepy and wintry and quiet, and that the music is being like the music that I make will have this Mars influence about being kind of more energetic, being more kind of hot, being more loud, having that sort of like fiery Mars thing, but it just being like coming up against like the cold ice wall of Saturn of being like no parties, no fun. We're just gonna sleep and nap and don't make the loud ruckus, and also like this whole thing. Like I was, to be honest, like earlier, I mean I've wound back up at my parents' place or I should say my mom's house right now. And I was thinking that I would basically, earlier this year, I was looking for housing, to which I had a hard time finding housing, but had it in my head that, like no roommate in their right mind is gonna want me making, obnoxious drum machine beats and, crazy techno music. They want a responsible working professional and stuff like this. So I would have to put my childish, hobbies behind me and grow up and be a man. And so this is also like the very like the square to Saturn thing as well, is just kind of like the Senex quality of like, old maturity and being responsible and doing the important things in life, whereas like just making silly electronic music is just like a kid's game or something like this, right? um Anyways, all this kind of stuff has been coming up for me around this Mercury Mars square to Saturn. um You know what? I mean, I don't know if I'm talking about this too much, but another thing which is just funny is that the skiff that I bought, I bought it. I bought. I don't know. I don't know. You don't know if you people know anything about modular synthesizers, but you need to get a case to put the things into. And before I went to the hospital, I was like flat out on my back. But I had this decision. Like I was just actually, I don't know if you can picture me being totally sick and just like recklessly spending money on stuff. Like I was buying a bunch of natural health products that were being recommended for me. Like I got like a whole like pound of this herbal tea that somebody recommended, that was like good for clearing out bacteria, and I can't even drink it now because it conflicts with the medication that I'm on. But I bought this whole I was buying all this shit because I'm kind of like, I've got money and I'm don't even like, I don't know. It was just my attitude. But I was like, eventually, while Mars and Mercury were conjunct in Virgo, I bought this powered skiff with the intention to put modules in, and which is kind of funny because now that Mars and Mercury are in conjunct in Scorpio, now the modules actually go in it, right? Um, and it's sort of like there's another Mars Mercury conjunction anyways. I mean, I hopefully I'm not, if you're bored by this stuff, you can just skip around the video, you don't have to listen. But I mean, I'm just getting this stuff down here. To me this the Mars Mercury conjunct and the different stages of me putting this stuff together, to me it's like, oh wow, this really works for the astrology. I don't know if anybody cares, but I'm just reporting on it. Another thing that I've noticed is, I mean, this is like, again, I I'm perhaps a bit embarrassed about it, but one thing about me is that I don't drive, and I've like never had a driver's license. um, and I've just gotten by without driving, living a not very car oriented life. Um, but in spite of all this, what I've found is I've got a weird obsession with racing video games. And I'm like, I'm not really like, obviously, as somebody who doesn't drive, I'm not really a car guy. And I'm not even like that interested in whatever, like fixing up cars or like driving cars fast or something. But when it comes to like video games, for some reason I really like car video games. I don't know if I can, and maybe if you want to get all like psychoanalytical, maybe I'm like, it's like the missing part or something like that, the missing piece surfacing up or something like this, like my lack of driving coming out for me, kind of being obsessed with playing video games where you're driving. To be honest, though, it's like a while back, I kind of made this decision that I didn't want to play violent video games anymore, which I think, as a lot of people do. I mean, I played plenty of shooter games when I was younger, but I don't know. I'm to a degree over the years I became a little bit more sensitive. That's what led me to do things, be interested in stuff like astrology and intuitive stuff. And there's some when being a bit more open and sensitive, it just seems crazy how much of our media just sensationalizes violence, or that like we basically have games that are like grooming people to join the military or something. Like we're fetishizing gun culture and in war and stuff. And I mean, like I just recognize that I've been, yeah, a big part of my childhood involved a lot of games and a lot of entertainment that's very war, gun, violence oriented. And I'm just, yeah, making, I mean, eventually just making a conscious decision that it's just like I don't really want to invest my time and energy into that stuff, or get my brain wired up for like running around shooting people. I mean, it should be a pretty like easy, simple concept, but the culture seems like if you look at the majority of games is stuff like Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty, or those the most popular games are all like really violent stuff. And that's one thing I like about racing games is that it's like, I mean, aside from like getting into a, flipping your car or getting into a car crash or something, like it's just good, clean fun, you know. Um, but but anyways, there's also something about the video game stuff, Mercury and Mars together, which I mean, I mean, maybe some people would be finding themselves playing some of these violent video games with Mars, the god of war, getting in there. But I think another expression of Mars could just be like the foot on the gas pedal, going fast kind of thing. But um, there's something. For me, it's helped because like I don't know. It could be also a bit of the seasonal affective disorder, or as I like to call it, Scorpio affective disorder, as it seems to kick in Scorpio season. But something about just some mindless fun, and having these little like dopamine reward things where you're like, you just won, good job, you're winning levels, like level up. Like it's like it like it seems like the whole thing is like designed to like get your dopamine reward mechanism going and stuff like that. And that whole situation where like the Mercury and the Mars being like the kind of like the foot on the gas, like, technological, having some fun, but that squaring off against Saturn, representing maybe the kind of the more sullen, depressive, wintry kind of thing. Or also, I mean, in my case too, like I'm saying, like I don't even drive. So like, this whole the whole question about like your blind spot, what you're ignorant of, what you're unable to do. Like there's something about like Saturn showing up there. Like I'm Mercury Mars coming in as the racing video game, Saturn showing up with the fact that I don't even drive, and I'm just like entertaining a simulation of driving when I don't drive at all. I mean, I'm considering actually getting my license finally, and actually finally getting a car too. I might that I just got out of the hospital a month ago, but I'm starting to feel better, so maybe that can be, something for me to get going on. Um, but that right now I'm seeing it express itself through this behavior of the appeal of racing video games. So um, one one last thing that I've noticed about the Mercury Mars square Saturn is, um, if you think about Mercury as being the messenger, the communicator, and being basically like hitting both of the classical malefics, that Mars square Saturn itself can be a kind of a frustrating one, because Mars Mars wants to go forward and Saturn is like a wall, or that like Mars is hot and Saturn is cold, and they kind of, have these kind of conflicting energies. Um, that when you bring in Mercury, it brings in this whole thing about like the communicator, the language, thinking, expressing yourself. Um, and what I'm noticing is that the frustration comes up, at least the way that I've been noticing it. It's like there's certain things that are, it's like when the situation itself isn't so difficult, but for some reason the communication around it is really difficult. Where it's like you could be talking about something and somebody like makes like it could be like a, if you're doing customer support or whatever, like if you're a tech guy and you're answering questions on the phone, and it's like the actual problem itself is not really that complicated to solve, but what's complicated is that the person on the phone doesn't know how to talk about it, and in the communication is making the thing out to be like 10 times more difficult than it actually is. Or like that things which are really pretty simple just become, you make a mountain out of a molehill, or it just turns into this whole mess, but based on how you're talking about it. And that, or then you could have like the actual, like that whole thing about like being frustrated and banging your head against the wall, but it's not because you can't fix the problem. It's about trying to actually communicate to the person what they have to do. Or something like that. Or like the something about the communications that go on between people, setting off these frustrations. And I think especially with Mercury and Uranus and stuff like that, that technology is a great example. And it may be. It's also kind of funny with the lighting here. I don't know how this video is going to turn out because it looks my face keeps getting burnt out from the natural sunlight that I'm using. Anyways, that's kind of like as much as I've sketched out for notes, and this is already over half an hour video. Hopefully, I didn't bore you guys. Hopefully, my own tangents, the tangents that I've been going on about how I've been noticing this stuff in my own life have not been too off topic. You can see the relevance, and this is illuminating for you what it means when Mercury and Mars are together, squaring Saturn, and I'm not just rambling on about my own personal stuff that has no relevance to your life. But and maybe, hey, maybe you can get some crossover audiences of people who like who are interested in both electronic music and astrology. Because, but yeah, those are the kind of things that I'm trying to I'm working with here. I definitely see, for me, anyways, I definitely see the technological aspect coming through with this Mercury, Mars, and Uranus and stuff like that. All right, well, hopefully this aspect, this transit, is treating you all well out there. Um, and I don't know. I'll get back to you when I make another one.